Emily had always lived a quiet life in a small town in Ohio, the kind of town where everyone knew your name, and dreams rarely stretched beyond the county lines. She worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic, lived in a modest apartment above a florist shop, and took care of her mother, who had been battling cancer for over 2 years. Life wasn't easy, but it was manageable until it wasn't. When the pandemic hit, the clinic where Emily worked closed down. With no savings and no job, she struggled to keep up with rent and utility bills. But the biggest burden was the mountain of medical expenses piling up for her mother's chemotherapy treatments. Insurance only covered so much, and the out-of-pocket costs were staggering. Emily applied for government assistance, took freelance gigs, even tried food delivery apps, but nothing made a real dent in the debt. Collectors began to call daily. She skipped meals to buy her mom's medication. She pawned off the few valuable things she owned, her camera, her grandmother's ring, even her laptop. One freezing January evening, she returned home to find an eviction notice pinned to her door. Her mom's health was worsening, and now they risked losing their home. Emily sat down on the cold floor of her kitchen and cried for hours. She felt completely alone. Her father had died when she was a child, and her relatives were either distant or unwilling to help. It felt like the walls were closing in, like life had dealt her a hand she couldn't win with. That night, she posted a desperate message on a local community board, offering part-time caregiving or cleaning services to anyone in need. She even included her phone number, hoping anyone, would respond. The next morning, she received a message from a man named Daniel. He said he'd seen her post and wanted to meet over coffee. He claimed he had a proposition that could help solve her financial problems, but he didn't mention any job. Emily was skeptical, but desperation has a way of silencing reason. She met Daniel at a small cafe in town. He was quiet, well-dressed, and had a calm, serious demeanor. He didn't waste time. "I need someone to marry me for a year," he said plainly. "I'll pay you $500,000. Emily blinked, stunned, thinking it was some kind of sick joke. But he wasn't smiling. He handed her a folder with legal documents and offered her time to think. That night, Emily stared at the papers in her hands. It felt wrong, it felt crazy, but it also felt like the only way to save her mother's life and maybe her own. Emily didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed clutching the folder Daniel had given her, heart pounding, thoughts racing. Who offers a complete stranger $500,000 just to get married for a year? It sounded like something out of a movie. The documents were real neatly typed, notarized drafts of a prenuptial agreement and confidentiality clause. Daniel hadn't pressured her. In fact, he'd told her to consult a lawyer, take her time, and walk away at any point if she felt uncomfortable. Still, the question lingered in her mind. Why? Why would anyone do this? They met again at the same cafe 2 days later. This time, Daniel opened up slightly, though still guarded. He told her he came from a wealthy but broken family based in New York. His father had passed away, and his late grandfather's estate had a bizarre clause. Daniel could only inherit his portion if he was married by a certain date. It wasn't about love or appearances, just legal status. Daniel claimed he had no interest in love, nor time for it. He wanted freedom from his family's manipulation and needed a partner who wouldn't complicate things. "You'd be doing me a favor," he said simply, "and I'd be giving you a fresh start." Emily listened carefully. Everything in her screamed caution, but the weight of her situation, her mother's deteriorating condition, the bills, the eviction drowned out her doubts. Daniel never flirted, never tried to charm her. He was cold in some ways, maybe emotionally distant, but respectful. He didn't ask for anything physical or romantic. The marriage, he emphasized, would be purely transactional. 1 year, and they'd part ways. He even offered to transfer a portion of the money, $100,000, as a sign of good faith before they married. That stunned her. She didn't know if it was brave or foolish, but she accepted. Within a week, they were married in a courthouse. No flowers, no rings, no guests, just a few signatures, a judge, and an awkward silence. Emily moved into Daniel's suburban home on the outskirts of Cleveland. It was minimalist, almost too clean, and lacked any personal touches. He gave her a separate room, provided a credit card for living expenses, and reminded her of the 1 year limit. Their daily routine was distant but oddly civil. Daniel would leave early in the morning, return late, and spend hours in his office. Emily wasn't sure what he did for work he never offered, and she didn't pry. Still, little things surprised her. He never questioned her purchases. He left care packages for her mom at the hospital. And once, when she caught a cold, he left a handwritten note beside her tea. "Get some rest, you matter too." Something about him felt haunted, like he was running from something he wouldn't talk about. But Emily had no time to think deeply. Her mom was still fighting, the clock was ticking, and she was now someone's wife, even if it didn't feel like it. Life settled into an unusual rhythm for Emily after the wedding. She still couldn't quite believe what she had agreed to marry to a stranger, living in his house, pretending like everything was normal. The arrangement felt surreal, like she had stepped into someone else's life. And yet, it wasn't all bad. The money Daniel had promised came through, and she used it immediately to clear hospital debts and move her mother to a better facility. That alone made her feel like she had made the right decision. Daniel remained distant. He worked long hours, often coming home well past dinner, sometimes not at all. When he was home, he stayed in his study, reading or typing on his laptop. There were rules, no questions about his past, no romantic involvement, and minimal public appearances. He told her they would go out together only when needed to show they were a real couple in front of anyone related to the inheritance issue. But something about Daniel was puzzling. He was cold, yes, but not cruel. He wasn't a man who barked orders or tried to control her. He respected her space, asked about her mother's health occasionally, and sometimes left little gestures that made her heart ache in unexpected ways. One morning, she found a note on the kitchen counter. "Don't forget your mom's birthday is next week. I booked a table for 2." She hadn't told him the date he had remembered from a passing conversation. That small detail struck her more deeply than she expected. Over time, Emily began to feel less like a guest and more like she belonged. The house, though sterile at first, began to feel lived in. She added potted plants, books, and photographs known with Daniel, just snapshots of her mother, sunsets, and quiet moments. Daniel never commented, but he never removed them either. One night, it rained heavily. Daniel came home soaked, shivering slightly. He collapsed onto the couch without a word. Emily, moved by something unexplainable, brought him a towel and some tea. They sat there in silence, the storm howling outside. After a while, he said softly, "You don't know how much this means to me." He didn't explain what this was. She didn't ask. They began to share small moments like that quiet breakfast, silent walks, mutual glances that lingered longer than they should have. She started to see cracks in his armor, the tired eyes, the way he avoided phone calls, the stack of unopened letters in his office. Daniel was hiding something, but he wasn't hiding from her. It was during those days that Emily realized her feelings were changing. What had begun as a contract was slowly becoming something more, at least for her. She found herself thinking about Daniel when he wasn't home, wondering if he was okay, wishing he would open up just a little more. But no matter how close they seemed to get, he always kept a part of himself locked away. And that mystery, that invisible wall, made her both curious and afraid because she was starting to care. Emily hadn't meant to fall in love. That was never part of the deal. But love has a strange way of creeping in quietly, slowly, until one day it's impossible to ignore. The more time she spent with Daniel, the more she saw the person behind the distant, guarded exterior. He was thoughtful in ways words couldn't capture, always attentive, always watching, yet never overstepping the boundaries they had set. He remembered the little things, like how she liked her coffee or how she always left the light on in the hallway at night. He was never expressive, but his actions spoke volumes. What made it harder was that Daniel wasn't unkind, just closed off. Sometimes Emily would catch him staring out the window late at night, lost in thought, eyes full of a sadness she couldn't explain. Other times, he'd try to speak, stumble over his words, then retreat into silence. He was fighting something, but he never let her close enough to help. And yet, the connection between them grew. It was subtle, built on glances, quiet meals, shared space, and unspoken understanding. She began to feel more than just affection. She felt something deeper, something painful. She realized she didn't want the marriage to end after 1 year. She wanted more than the contract, more than the money. She wanted Daniel. Not the stranger she'd married, but the man she'd come to know in pieces. But every time she thought they were getting closer, he would pull back, retreat behind that wall he'd built around himself. Then, one day, everything changed. It was just 2 weeks before their 1 year anniversary. Emily had gone to the hospital to check on her mother, who was finally doing better thanks to the better treatment and care. When she returned home that evening, something felt off. The house was unusually quiet. Daniel's office was empty. His phone was gone. His laptop was missing. And in the bedroom, the closet had been cleared out. Panic surged through her. She called his number disconnected. She tried his email, bounced back. There was no note, no explanation, nothing. He had simply vanished. The only trace he left behind was a silent bank transfer of the remaining amount he owed her, $400,000. That, in a strange sense of finality. Days turned into weeks, and there was still no word from Daniel. She contacted the lawyer who had drafted their agreement, but he claimed to know nothing about Daniel's whereabouts. Emily checked local records, hospital databases, even hired a private investigator, but it was like he had disappeared from the face of the earth. Her heart ached not for the lost money, not for the marriage, but for the man who had come into her life like a ghost and left the same way. She sat on the couch they used to share, clutching a cup of cold tea, wondering if he had ever truly planned to stay or if he had only come to disappear from the start. Months passed, and Daniel remained a ghost, no trace. No explanation, just a haunting absence that filled every quiet corner of the house. Emily tried to move on, but the unanswered questions clawed at her. Why did he leave? Why didn't he say goodbye? And most of all, did any of it mean something to him, the way it had come to mean everything to her? The money was still in her account, untouched except for what was needed. She didn't care about it anymore. It was never about the money. She started writing in a journal, trying to make sense of the whirlwind year that had turned her life upside down. She wrote about the first time she met Daniel, about the way he avoided eye contact but paid attention to everything else. She wrote about the nights he left tea by her door, the way he'd silently replace her dead flowers with fresh ones, and how he always left the porch light on if she came home late. She wrote about the silence between them, not empty silence, but something full, heavy with meaning that never quite made it to words. One day, almost a year after he disappeared, a letter arrived. It was handwritten in neat, careful strokes. No return address, no name, just, Emily, I'm sorry. The letter was short. Daniel explained that he had been diagnosed with a terminal illness a few months before they met. His family had pressured him to marry to secure his inheritance, but he knew he wouldn't live long enough to enjoy any of it. He never told anyone, not even his lawyer. He said he picked her because she looked strong, like someone who had already been through pain and come out the other side still standing. He didn't want to drag someone he loved into the storm he saw coming. And to his own surprise, he had started to love her. I never planned on falling for you, he wrote, but you made me believe in something I had given up on a long time ago. That's why I left. Because you deserved more than watching me fall apart. He said he spent his last days in peace, reading the notes she used to leave around the house, watching old videos of her laughing with her mother, and realizing what a strange, beautiful gift their year together had been. At the end of the letter was a small photo, Daniel smiling, holding a single sunflower, the only flower Emily ever said reminded her of home. Emily sat by the window with the letter in her hands, tears sliding down her cheeks. The pain was sharp, but so was the gratitude. He hadn't disappeared because he didn't care. He had left because he cared too much. In the end, it wasn't just a story of a woman who married a stranger for money. It was a story of two broken people who, for one brief moment, gave each other a kind of love neither had expected and neither would forget. Emily's journey began with desperation, a quiet storm of hospital bills, helpless nights, and a mother whose life was slipping away faster than hope could catch up. When a stranger offered her a lifeline in the form of a 1-year marriage contract, she took it without thinking of love, without expecting anything more than survival. But life has a way of twisting even the most calculated choices into stories of unexpected depth. Daniel, the mysterious man behind the offer, seemed like a ghost in human form, distant, emotionless, practical. Yet, with each passing day, Emily discovered flickers of warmth hidden behind his cold eyes. It wasn't the fairy tale she'd read about as a child. It was real, messy, quiet, and then suddenly gone. Just as she was beginning to hope for something beyond the agreement, Daniel disappeared, leaving behind money, silence, and a gaping hole in her heart. Weeks turned to months with no answers. Until one letter-soft, trembling words scribbled by a dying man revealed the truth. He hadn't left out of cruelty, but out of love and fear. Daniel was terminally ill. He didn't want Emily to watch him fade away. He had fallen for her, and that scared him more than death itself. The money may have saved her mother, but the manth quiet, broken man he saved Emily. He taught her that even in the most unlikely places, even in the strangest arrangements, love can grow, real love. Painful, selfless love. In the end, Emily didn't just marry a stranger for money. She lived a year that would change her forever. And though it ended with a heartbreak, it also left her with something priceless. A truth she would carry for the rest of her life, that sometimes the shortest stories are the ones that echo the loudest in your soul.